is the founder and the person who drives TURF, that stands for Texans Uniting for Reform and Freedom. Terri Hall, I am so proud to know her, and I will tell you that there are people in Austin, in the upper echelons of government, that don't like Terri. They don't like Terri Hall. And they say, you know, Terri Hall, she just doesn't tell the truth. You know what? They never challenge her on her facts. They just don't like hearing it. Now, what you don't know about Terri is that Terri is the mother. She and Roger, her husband over here, are parents to 8 children with a 9th one on the way. They are home educator parents. Terri Hall every day, if you count Roger in the number, Terri Hall every day has 10 reasons not to do what she does, which is fight for you in Austin. Terri is up there at 8 o'clock so many mornings. She's in those hearings. She's testifying. Terri goes back and forth from San Antonio to Austin several times a week. There will be people in this state that will benefit from Terri Hall's work that will never know her name. That is the kind of commitment we need from people. And I will tell you, in Tyler, Texas, there are people who are qualified to help us in this fight that are out chasing a little white ball. While this mother is down there fighting, I'm going to ask you to please turn off your cell phones and give Terri Hall your best attention. And hold on to your seats. Because if you think that I gave you some information, my sister warrior here, Terri Hall, she's gonna round it off for you. Thank you.
I cannot think of a better partner in crime in Austin than Joanne Fleming. You all have a treasure in her. All right, well, we're going to talk about toll roads and transportation policy and what's wrong with everything that's going wrong in our state when it comes to this issue. They've basically been on a spending spree. You've heard about that today already. What's happened is we have a state gas tax that's the primary, well, and federal gas tax too, is the primary source of funding for our road system. The state gas tax is 20 cents a gallon. The federal is 18.4 cents a gallon. Neither have been raised in 20 years. Not adjusted to inflation. It doesn't go up with the price of your gas. So instead of fix that problem, they've decided to borrow and spend their way out of it. In fact, 47% of our gas tax isn't even going to roads. So that exacerbates the problem on top of the first problem. Then number 3, Texas leads the nation in road debt. That means more than California, more than New York, more than New Jersey. I actually grew up in California, but we got to Texas as fast as we could. And believe me, we did. They tax you out of there. But at the end of the day, as long as I can remember, whether my parents are voting or when I was voting in California, there was bond elections, a lot of them for roads. And here we are in Texas, exceeding California's road debt in less than 8 years, while they've been issuing debt in California my entire life. That's a big, big number, $31 billion with principal and interest. And then, of course, our state spending's been out of control during the same time frame. The last 20 years, our spending's tripled. Most of that's been health and human services has gone up 406%, education 276%. But I also have to say in the last 10 years, it's doubled under a Republican administration, which is so disappointing for us. Now, these are not your traditional toll roads that we're seeing. They've shifted. Instead of our very affordable gas tax funded road system, we now have been shifting to tolls to bail out our legislators who have raided our highway funds and have refused to fix the problem with our existing road taxes. So These are not like your traditional turnpikes in Houston and Dallas. Those were brand new roads. They were done with something called toll revenue bonds. That means that there's no taxpayer money involved. If the traffic didn't show up for those roads, it's the private bond investors that take the hit for that, not you and me. So those were more like well-conceived toll roads. And those aren't the kind that most Texans object to. The users truly paying for the road. And of course, the money and control stayed in Texas. And we think that a well-conceived toll road would take the toll off the road when it's paid for. Yes. Right? I hear an amen to that? Yes. And now they're actually imposing tolls on our existing roads. And that's a whole different discussion we'll get to a little bit later. Then there's this very, very controversial financing mechanism called public-private partnerships. Really what this is public money for private profits. One of the big things that really launched the Tea Party was these bailouts, the TARP bailouts. And this is not unlike that, because we were socializing the losses and privatizing the profits. Well, that's precisely how these public-private partnerships are structured. It basically hands our public infrastructure over to private corporations. Some people would call that fascism, corporatism, even cronyism. You put the name on it. It's also Agenda 21. I've actually read quite a bit of the transportation plank of Agenda 21. And one of the primary, well, two of the primary goals are to restrict mobility and abolish, it says abolish private property rights. They do not want private property. It's all about the collective. And this is how they do it, because public-private partnerships, we always have had eminent domain for roads. But now we're taking it in the name of a public use and giving it to a private corporation for profit for up to 50 years. Some parts of the country, they're 75, even 100-year deals. So these are really sweetheart deals. These privatized toll roads use the state's exclusive power of eminent domain and abuse it for a private use instead of a public one. You know, in Texas, we're supposed to have a constitutional protection against eminent domain for private gain. Don't you remember quite a few sessions on that? There was even a special session, I believe, in 2006 on that. Well, that's not what's happening now. They always make sure, and Joanne knows about all the trap doors, there's always an exception in these bills. There's always an exception and a loophole for the type of deals like this that they want to continue to do, but they can go back home to the district and promise the moon that they have ended eminent domain for private gain, when in fact, they have made sure that they can still do these public-private partnerships for roads and public facilities. They also have in these little trapdoors, these gotcha clauses, something called the non-compete agreement. This means that the state or the toll entities, whatever's in your region, like you all have a regional mobility authority that does Loop 49 around Tyler, they are not allowed to build any free capacity, whether it's highways, sometimes it can even be farm-to-market roads, any kind of major arterial road. It goes down that far that they cannot build any free roads that compete with the privately run and operated toll road. So that pretty well puts the future of our public transportation needs in the hands of private corporations. They're telling us what we can and cannot build in the state of Texas. I don't know about you, but that does not sit well with me. They also have incentives and little gotcha clauses in the contracts that allow you to manipulate the speed limits. For instance, they'll increase the speed limit on the tollway and decrease the speed limits on your free routes to try and incentivize people and force you to have to take that toll. And they've actually done it on a road we'll talk about in a minute. They also charge toll rates as high as 75 cents a mile. And really, it's giving these private corporations the power to tax. Well, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Here's what tolling our existing roads looks like. The folks in the middle there, that's a 10-mile toll road. It's almost $1 a mile to take that during peak hours, $9.60. And don't think that that's not possible in Texas, because this is California. It's an example. It was one of the first deals ever done, one of these public-private partnerships. But I can tell you, and this is pretty much what my highway in San Antonio looks like, US 281, the congested lanes, that's pretty much where we're at right now during peak hours. And they want to stick some of these managed toll lanes down the middle of it and charge you a premium to get out of congestion. But how much does it really cost us? Well, if it's a publicly operated toll road, they generally average anywhere from 15 cents a mile to a quarter a mile. There's several in Austin that are up to $1.50 a mile to take some of these toll projects. So it really varies, but let's just take kind of middle of the road here, 25 cents a mile. That's like adding $5 to every gallon of gas you buy. Now, if it's one of these public-private partnerships, sometimes we call them P3s for short. These P3s, there's two that are going to open, one later this year, one next year, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And those are going to charge you 75 cents a mile. That's $9.75 one way, $19.50 a day, $100 a week, nearly $5,000 a year in new taxes to get to work. That's like adding $15 to every gallon of gas you buy. And yet Cintra forecasts only 8% of the cars are ever going to be able to avail themselves of those lanes. And just to make you a little bit more angry, if you're not yet, like Joanne likes to say, it's going to set your hair on fire. Even worse, they built those projects with $1 billion in your gas tax money. So your money went into building it, but you're going to have to pay 75 cents a mile or $5,000 a year just to get to work. And that's if you don't have to take it other days of the week. So really, it's pennies versus dollars. Gas tax are pennies a day. Tolls are dollars a day. Here's this example about the manipulation of the speed limits. Cintra secured the first P3 contract in 2007 before we could get a moratorium on such contracts in place. So now they're truly illegal to enter into these contracts in the state of Texas, except there's been exceptions in the bill. And they've passed exceptions, if you want to call them that, every session since 2007. And most of them are just the same projects that were in the original bill in 2007, and they haven't been completed yet, so they just keep pushing the can down the road from one session to the next. But ultimately, they have the State Highway 130 segments 5 and 6. Some of you may know that State Highway 130, that's the loop around Austin, or this leg around Austin to help you avoid traffic on I-35. Well, the first 4 segments are owned by the state, which is about 46 miles. The southern 41 miles is operated by this Spanish company, Cintra. Well, it has a lovely non-compete clause in that contract. Virtually the entire county of Caldwell and Guadalupe cannot have any competing free roads for our lifetimes, for our children's lifetimes. Even my grandchildren will not be able to drive on a free road in Caldwell or Guadalupe counties in our state because of this non-compete clause. Very draconian non-compete clause. The ones in the Metroplex weren't as strict as this one. Then they have in there an incentive to increase the speed limit. What Cintra did was they put in this contract, if the state increased the speed limit to say 70, 75, 80, 85, they got a payment, I call it a bribe, from Cintra for the privilege of increasing the speed on the tollway. Well, TxDOT went all the way to the max and got a $100 million payoff from this Spanish company to raise the speed limit to the highest in the country. They actually had to get a state law changed last session, which we fought, mostly because we knew it had to do with this. But they had to get the state law changed because before that, our state speed limits could not exceed, I believe it was 75. Well then, the same commission hearing that they increased the speed limit to 85 miles per hour for the tollway for the Spanish company for which TxDOT got a $100 million payoff, they concurrently lowered the speed limit on the free route adjacent to the tollway. Used to be 65, now they lowered it down to 55. Do you think that was a coincidence? No. Likely not. So they cashed in on the $100 million. And then one other thing about these little gotcha contracts. Anyone that comes into our state from across the border, whether it's our southern border or any of the other states that surround Texas, you and I, the Texas taxpayer, are on the hook for those tolls. Those people get to ride on this road for free, and we have to pay a private operator so that they are guaranteed their profits. So they truly are socializing all their losses. They've always made the taxpayers a hedge to make sure that they can't lose out on the deal. Well, it eliminates due process as well in how we deal with toll collections. It puts the taxpayer on the hook for these profits. They use massive amounts of public money, like the $1 billion for those 2 Metroplex projects. And they always, always, always cost the taxpayers more. Back during the moratorium debate, in fact, it was one of your senators, I think most of you probably have, Senator Robert Nichols, although you have L-Type up here too.
Before redistricting, he's no longer.
He's not up here anymore. Gotcha, okay. Well, he was the one who authored this moratorium bill to put a moratorium on these types of contracts. He said it's designed to extract exorbitant toll rates, and he was right. But what I find so interesting is he still voted for these P3s in 2009, 2011, and he just voted for them last week. In fact, he's authoring the bill in committee that just got voted out last week. And they cost 50% more. This is a P3 expert, Dennis Enright, who testified before the committee in 2007, said that they always cost more, and it's in fact 50% more to do them this way than if it was a publicly run toll project. And of course, that's even a publicly run toll project is still 25 times to 50 times more than a gas tax funded road. What's even worse is they're going to charge us these tolls in perpetuity. We actually have constitutional protection on this, so believe me, I'm still working on putting together a legal case to challenge them on the constitutionality of this, but they still passed the bill. This was last session, again authored by Nichols and Phillips in the House. Some of you may have heard of Larry Phillips. He chairs the House Transportation Committee and is really good at intimidating people to support Joe Strauss. Anyway, this bill actually does a Robin Hood rate of tolls from one road to another. Used to be in our state that you could not take toll revenues from one road and use it somewhere else because, gee, that's socialism. You know, that's Robin Hood. It's stealing from one and giving to another, is it not? Well, that's what they put in statute. They've legalized it now. So don't ever let Republicans convince you that they're not for socialism. It just has to be the right kind, and they're all for it. And so this allows them, in a sense, because we've figured out through all these very complex statutes, what it means is they can keep the toll in place forever, because what they're allowing them to do through system financing is to pledge the revenues from one road to another. So you can't take the tolls off the first road because those revenues are pledged to another one. And they'll do this 2, 3, 4 times over to keep funding their system. It's no longer your toll paying for the road. You're paying for everybody else's road. It's so mingled. You talk about truth in taxation, truth in budgeting. Oh, this is the most messed up scheme you've ever seen. And it allows them to use borrowed money to secure more borrowed money. And they can use that borrowed money for any purpose, even their operating expenses. Can you imagine using borrowed money just to keep these toll authorities open? And it includes rating property taxes for toll roads. I mean, it just keeps going. And then SB 19 was also passed. Nichols was the Senate sponsor on that one as well. It includes some of these other tolling entities. This first one related to RMAs, which you have here in Tyler. But there's North Texas Tollway Authority and the Harris County Tollway Authority are a little bit different entities. So they passed this bill to take care of them, gives them the legal ability to do socialism, system financing, allows them to toll in perpetuity, and it gives these toll entities ownership of these state highways in perpetuity. Again, why would they want ownership in perpetuity if you're a tolling entity if it's not because they want to keep the toll in place in perpetuity? This has become a new tax on driving, a hidden tax. People think the toll's paying for the road you're driving on, and that's just not the case anymore. They're going to keep it in place forever. Now, the fight over tolling existing roads, we've actually been having this for 8 years now. This is my 4th session working this issue. And for some reason, Senator Robert Nichols is our biggest roadblock on trying to prohibit tolls on existing freeways. Of course, that's a double tax, right? To charge us again for something our tax money's already built and paid for. Well, he's introduced a bill every session that is going to tweak the statute. He wants to take out some of the loopholes. There's tons of loopholes in this statute. But he wants to add in another one. So here's the current law. We'll just read it here. I know it's teeny. Except as provided by, the department may not operate a non-toll state highway or a non-toll state highway, non-toll state highway as a toll project, and may not transfer that highway or segment to another entity to operate it as a toll project. And then there's your big loophole. Unless. We like it until it gets to this. We're like, yeah, you can't operate a non-tolled part of our state highway system as a toll road, But here come all the exceptions. This is just a few that I've highlighted. The project was designated as a toll project before September 1st, 2005. Well, about 70% of the toll projects being developed around the state right now were in an MPO plan before September of 2005. So that pretty much gives them free rein to convert all kinds of roads all over our state, literally hundreds of toll projects. Then the second one, if they reconstruct the highway so that the number of non-toll lanes is greater than or equal to the number in existence before reconstruction, or if the facility is constructed adjacent to the highway or segment so that the number of non-toll lanes is equal to or greater than. Well, all of that comes into play because of how our highway department interprets that language. They take that to mean, okay, if you have a 6-lane road today, we can slap tolls on all 6 lanes of your highway, and as long as we leave you a frontage road, an access road alongside your highway, that's your new non-toll lanes. As long as we have the same number of lanes, never mind that one's a highway lane and expressway that you can go 60 miles an hour or more usually, and that the frontage road usually has 45 mile per hour posted speed limits. Of course, lots of driveways, lots of cars coming in and out, stoplights in the middle of your road. They can add more stoplights as the years go by. I don't think that that's a fair replacement. Do you? No. Well, that's what they're doing. And so that's the kind of language that they have exploited through the years. And they can also make any of our current HOV lanes a toll lane, as long as they allow HOV users to ride free. But they've even changed that, and we'll talk about it in a sec. We want to keep that language clean. We want it to stop and have no unless and have all those exceptions after it. But we're getting pushback from Senator Nichols and the Highway Department and all the toll authorities because they want to do this to us. They want to steal our highways and leave us frontage roads so that we're forced to have to pay that toll. Well, no Texans should ever have to have their paid-for freeway lanes converted to toll lanes and be stuck on substandard, downgraded frontage roads. Amen? Amen. Okay. The precedent, sadly, has already been set. That tollway I was telling you about that Centra had, first four-known toll road to open in the state of Texas, it was last fall. We announced a boycott of it, and it's actually not doing too well financially, so I'm going to take some of the credit for that because we don't want Texas sold off to these foreign companies. So nonetheless, they came in the Lockhart area, you know, Texas barbecue capital of the world or something like that. US 183 was their freeway through there. Centra came and put their toll road right on the top of that road and took over their freeway. Now that's Centra's toll road. They permanently shifted 183 to frontage roads. That is now their only free route. And remember, this non-compete agreement will last 52 years. 52 years they cannot build any competing free roads. No more highways. Even some major arterial roads will not be allowed because of these non-compete agreements. And they, remember, had their speed limit reduced from 65 down to 55. Well, we actually put in a bill that we support with Senator Zaffirini, who's the senator over that part of our state. And it was to prevent TxDOT from basically incentivizing people to use toll roads by downgrading or manipulating the free routes. Well, in committee just this week, Senator Nichols changed the language to that to allow them to still be able to downgrade your roads, your free roads, to frontage roads. It does not matter what bill it is, it gets hijacked, and they keep wanting to do this to us. They've also done on, oops, sorry. Where am I at now? No, I'm sorry. I have to go back. There we go, sorry. Highway 45 Southeast, Highway 71, Mopac, Highway 290, all in Austin. All of these were built with our gas tax money, and they're also taking over existing highways and leaving you frontage road as your non-toll option. I-10, the Katy Freeway, was built with our tax money, yet you're being charged a toll to drive on it. Highway 281 in San Antonio, they wanted to originally take every single lane we drive on today and slap tolls on it and leave us frontage road as the non-toll. But we've been fighting them on that for 8 years. All right. This is what we want to have pass, is Senate Bill 1029 or House Bill 1054. Those are the two bills that would keep it clean. that would just say the state cannot operate a non-tolled segment of the state highway as a toll segment. And stop right there. There's no exceptions, there's no time frames, there's no anything. As I was describing before, Senator Nichols has insisted that these frontage roads are acceptable replacement. Here's some other current legislation. Notice whose name keeps appearing. He's the chair of the committee, and so the chair does carry a lot of transportation bills on behalf of the department, TxDOT. So in his defense, that's why he carries a lot of these bills. But his name does tend to appear session after session. He's a former transportation commissioner. But this Bill 1730 would hand 18 Texas roads to private, even these foreign corporations in these P3 deals. Just passed committee Wednesday of this week. It includes Loop 49 around Tyler. It's the first time I've ever seen the Tyler Toll Road put in any of these pieces of legislation, and I've been following it for a long time. SB 1112 was passed 2 weeks prior, and this allows our property taxes to be used to subsidize toll projects. Now, why would they need to use our property taxes to build a toll road if they can go borrow it from the private sector with toll revenue bonds, and the toll pays back those toll revenue bonds? If the user's paying back the bonds, they don't need tax money in any of these deals. The reason why they're going after tax money is because none of these projects are toll viable. They're not financially solvent. They know going into the project that there's not going to be sufficient users of that road to even pay for the cost of building the road and retiring the debt. So they have to subsidize it. And they're subsidizing it with every kind of tax you can imagine. The same bill allows them to bring your sales tax, your local sales tax, to be pledged to these toll projects. Now, what's the chance of your property tax going down or being eliminated if they've pledged it to a transportation project for 50 years? Not likely. And it's just pushing the debt and taxes to the local level. And by the way, Joanne did make copies of something in the back table with the black tablecloth. We have all of our turf flyers for you. We actually have a comprehensive list of good bills and bad bills for you, so that some of these bills I'm mentioning, you can go and reference those so your head doesn't explode by the time I'm done here. But she has a letter that we have just sent to all the legislators and the leadership that outlines what we, the people, the grassroots, want on transportation policy. And one of the things we specifically outlined was no more debt and not pushing that debt to the local level. And yet here they are. These are the only bills that are passing, are the very ones that we said not to. So that should be disturbing. Okay, here's some more about this eminent domain for private gain. How many of you have heard of the Trans-Texas Corridor? Of course you have. It was going to come through part of this part of the state, which was Trans-Texas Corridor 69. And we attended all those hearings, and we got you all involved. If you were involved in some of that, we told you how to actually submit comments so they would count on the record, those kinds of things. We worked for 3 sessions to get a complete repeal of the Trans-Texas Corridor, and thanks to Lois Colcourse, we finally got it done last session. So that was good. However, the Trans-Texas Corridor can still move forward through these P3s, these public-private partnerships. That's the exact financing mechanism that they used for the Trans-Texas Corridor. Well, one of the things everyone objected to on that project was, one, the foreign ownership, the eminent domain for private gain, the monopoly that it's granting this private entity. Of course, it was a foreign company on top of it, which Texans just don't like. But one of the things that the Trans-Texas Corridor envisioned and allowed them to do was to take this extra land, more land than they really needed for the road project, and give this private toll operator exclusive right to develop the land inside or adjacent to the tollway. They could decide what restaurants, hotels, shopping, gas stations, they got to control all that development and profit from it exclusively. So we found out last May, and this is actually when I started to hook up more closely with Joanne, that TxDOT put out something called a request for information for private developers to develop an ancillary facility, they called it, in the middle of the TxDOT-owned portions of State Highway 130. And they were going to have, look at here, gas station, garage, store, hotel, restaurant. Wow, that sounds an awful lot like the Trans-Texas Corridor. Except now the state's going to do it. Well, just like we don't want a private developer getting to pick the winners and losers, because we're supposed to have a free market economy, last I checked. We don't want the state doing it either. The state's now trying to get into the land development business and decide who's going to be able to develop inside these tollways, not to mention the land grab. That they took all that land in the name of a public use for a public road, and now they're going to hand it to private developers for private gain. Well, we went and talked to the landowners from this bubble they had. Here's State Highway 130, and it went like this in the middle, and then down again. They purposely took this excess land, almost 70 acres. The two sisters that this land belonged to, when the state took it, inherited that land from the original League and Labor that was given to their great-great-great-grandfather, who actually surveyed what is now Travis County with Stephen F. Austin. They had 86 acres. TxDOT took 80 to do this in the middle. And of course, they were planning, because they knew this road was coming in, they didn't like it, their land was forcibly taken from them, but they thought, wow, maybe we could at least put a gas station near it and make some money. Now they can't, if the state is going to come in and compete with the private sector and have an exclusive captive audience revenue generating machine in the middle of the roadway. And even worse, they were going to have a revenue sharing agreement with that private company, so the state was going to get a piece of the pie. So offensive. So after we pull in Joanne and Deborah Medina and just anyone else that I knew cared about the Trans-Texas Corridor, private property rights, and these kinds of abuses, Jeff Judson, another gentleman that works with us in San Antonio, we went to meet with the TxDOT executive director. And thankfully, they decided to pull down that request for information and did not move forward with it. And there are actually similar P3 projects that are going to do this sort of thing, commercialize a public asset for the Texas Capitol, and at the local level, at your convention centers, your city halls, they're trying to do P3s for all of it. Where now it's public, it's supposed to be for a public use, and they're turning it into a private use. There's a city of Bee Cave right near Austin, where they came in and offered to build the city hall for the city, but took all this excess land around this city hall and put in what looks like the San Marcos Shopping Center around a city hall, where they get the exclusive monopoly to develop that land and profit from that land granted to them by government. If this is not a huge property rights abuse, I don't know what one looks like, because this is it. We're trying to get that out of code, by the way. TxDOT has that authority and a part of the transportation code, and we're working on getting that done. However, the Democrat who chairs that committee, the House Land and Resource Management Committee, will not hear Representative Colcourt's bill. And the bill is the same language we've been trying to get in every eminent domain bill since the Kelo case passed. And he is just not going to hear her bill. And that's the bill that we're using as the vehicle to get that stripped out of code. So this is what happens when we have a liberal speaker appointing liberal people over committees that we're trying to advance conservative legislation through. Well, is this the next bailout? Toll roads were promised to end our revenue shortfall problem and our congestion problem, but they've done neither. You saw that picture. Did the toll roads solve the congestion on that highway in California? It did for about a handful of people that can afford $10 one way each day. We're now in $31 billion in debt, and in fact, we're not actually collecting enough tolls to pay the debt we've already incurred on a lot of these toll roads. In fact, the NTTA had to raise their rate 32% in 2011, and they pegged it to go up automatically every year after that. So it's going to have constant increases on those toll roads because they aren't even collecting enough to cover their own debt. The taxpayers even bailed out the Austin toll road system, including that State Highway 130, the TxDOT-owned portion, and 2 other highways, with $100 million in your gas tax and mine, because they could not cover the debt service with the amount of people that are taking those roads. And you can see why. Who has that kind of money? For an auto to take that road from I-10 and Seguin on the central leg and get all the way around to Georgetown, you would be paying $12 to take that road. If you were a truck, it was $50. They've just recently done a pilot program using our tax and fee money to buy down a truck toll discount to try and get more trucks to take it. And they're able to use it at the auto rate. But that's only for a year, and as soon as they increase the price again because they can't cover the toll, the debt that they've already entered into, they're just going to keep coming after us to bail out these roads. And taxpayers are being set up for what I believe to be an infrastructure bubble, and it's going to be considered too big to fail. They wrap up plenty of taxpayer money in these deals, and guess what else they put in them? This won't shock you. Pension funds. That is what they want to put in them, because we can't possibly let our teachers starve if this toll road fails, so we're going to have to bail it out. We've had the Dallas Fire and Police pension funds are invested in the LBJ project in the Metroplex, a Centra project. And this is what they say about these Dallas toll roads. These are even our traditional turnpikes. They're in a world of hurt. So even the toll agency officials are expressing concern about the sustainability of all these tolls. Virtually all new capacity in Texas is slated to be tolled, particularly our urban areas. People are going to realize that every new road in the Metroplex is going to be a toll road. Even our free roads will soon have a toll component on them. The same gentleman, Vanderriff, oops, excuse me, I keep pressing that instead of, there we go, sorry. Vandergriff has told lawmakers recently that all but the Dallas North Tollway aren't working. They're unsustainable and not attracting enough traffic to even pay back their debt. On this MOPAC project in Austin, this will set your hair on fire too. They're using $230 million in our gas taxes to build a toll project, but they're still going to charge you a toll on it. There was some money that came through TxDOT by them refinancing some of their debt and by cost underruns, because as you know, we've been in a terrible economy since 2008. And so some of the bids came in lower than they anticipated, so they had an extra $2 billion. Well, Austin's portion was $230 million. MOPAC was scheduled to be expanded with tolls. Well, when you have these regional mobility authorities, these toll authorities, whose sole job is to keep their doors open and feed their bureaucracy, instead of use that free road money that they could use to open it and expand MOPAC and keep it a freeway, they decided to still use that money and still make it a toll road. And even worse, they had their bid come in $20 million under this cost, and instead of give that money back to TxDOT so that they can build some freeways with it, they decided to hang on to that money and use it on enhancements for the project. Here, they're also shrinking the width of our free lanes, which in effect will slow the free lanes. So the lanes you have now aren't going to be the same when they are done reconfiguring this road. They're going to make it so that you have to slow down on the free route. There's actually 9 design exceptions in that project, knowing, because you can imagine, you've probably seen the HOV lanes if you're ever driving around in the Metroplex, how hard it is to get into and out of those lanes, because a lot of times you're higher speed in the HOV lane because there's never anyone in them. And then there's all kinds of congestion. Well, how do you get across all this slow traffic into high-speed traffic? How do you do that? How do you merge safely? Because there are no acceleration or deceleration lanes. So there's all these safety issues. Well, they've knowingly gotten exceptions from the Federal Highway Administration that they are designing this road and how to get the people into and out of these toll lanes in ways that will, I talked with the TxDOT engineer about this, it will cause fatalities. Map 21, oh, this is so fun. The federal highway bill, they passed this last June. So on the federal level, we're not much better than we are on the state level, which is why we have to be strong as Texas and get our act cleaned up. It's a 2-year bill. You'll love this. It was a 2-year bill funded with 10 years of taxes. So when it expires next year, we'll still be paying for this bill for 8 more years, because our federal highway trust fund is also broke because the gas tax hasn't been adjusted for 20 years. It also increases our borrowing by nearly a factor of 10. And that is this TIFIA loan program. It stands for like Transportation Innovation Finance Infrastructure Act, something like that. And it is a huge borrowing scheme from the Fed. It's not backed by any revenue. We don't have the money. It's like funny money. Okay, it's more borrowed money from the Fed that they are lending out to states for local toll projects like the LBJ, like the North Tarrant Express in the Metroplex, and they also secured a TIFIA loan, Centra did. All three of these projects are Centra, same company. You see some cronyism at play here? Every one of those projects used TIFIA loan money. Every one of them. And we were advocating at the federal level to get rid of the TIFIA loan program. The very first TIFIA loan that went to a South Bay Expressway in San Diego, California, went bankrupt in less than 3 years. They were off by nearly 40,000 cars a day in their traffic projections that would take that route. So that's how messed up this program is. And they, instead of getting rid of it, increased it by a factor of 10. What we also need, the other problem we have in that bill is that TxDOT can build these toll lanes in our existing roads without any public hearings. And they can do it with environmental exemptions and not even have an environmental review process, which is what triggers the public hearings. Now, say what you want about Senator Hutchison. I know that she's what a lot of us would call a rhino, not conservative enough. However, on this issue, she was fabulous. She was the one that put a federal ban in place to protect Texas from tolls on existing lanes, that they could not come and take an existing lane of our road. In fact, that's the only thing that's been trying to protect us from all the stuff that TxDOT's doing on the state level. Well, she's only been able to get it on appropriations bills one year after another. It's never gone in a transportation bill, and it expires this September. So we've been talking with Cruz's office about keeping this permanent. And this bill also advanced the Trans-Texas Corridor trade routes. Here's our HOV thing. This is what I was going to tell you about a little bit earlier. The RTC, which is a Regional Transportation Council in the Metroplex that makes all the decisions, thumbs up or thumbs down on toll projects, they're transitioning their HOV lanes into something called hot lanes. How many of you have heard of that term? Have you heard that? A few of you have heard? Okay, so they're trying to make them hot lanes. Well, that stands for high occupancy toll lane. So they're going to sell, I kid you not, because I also write columns for the Examiner and the Express News, and so I get to call up these guys in Sam Media. And so they have to answer my questions, which as a citizen they never did. So I was talking with their spokesperson about this change, and wrote an article on it, and they literally said with a straight face, we are selling our excess capacity on our HOV lanes to single occupancy cars if they're willing to pay the toll to access the lane. So here we have our transportation and our freedom to travel being hijacked by status. If you have more than one person in your car, you'll be able to ride free. But if you don't, you're going to be punished and have to pay. Well, one of the things that started this whole mess is the fact that Centra, in their contract with Centra on those two major projects in the Metroplex, their HOV policy is you have to have 3 people in your car to ride free on Centra's toll lanes. So they tried to come in and change all of the HOV policy for the entire Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth area, based on what this private company put in their contract. Well, of course, the public opposed it. You know, they had all these hearings and people said, no, we don't want that. So they kept the HOV plus 2 in place, but guess what? The taxpayers have to pay for the HOV plus 2 users in Centra's toll lanes, because the only ones that they will discount or ride for free will be HOV plus 3, and actually it's not even free, it's only at a discount. So I'm like, well, I don't know if 25 cents a mile is going to be much better than 75 cents a mile to most people, but anyway, so it's just a crazy mess. We're throwing good money after bad. We have a sea of red ink on all these toll projects. In fact, 45 Southeast, built with gas tax money, opened as a toll road, literally said this in the paper in Austin. They opened it as a toll road to help cover the debt on the other parts of the toll system that they couldn't cover with the users of those roads. So we're literally opening free roads that are paid for as toll roads to cover the debt on roads that aren't cash flowing and they're not financially solvent projects. So we need you to help educate your groups and your neighbors and your communities and be active during this session. And oh, please get on the phone when we need to have phone calls go in. Here's what we want. This is what's outlined in the letter that Joanne has back there. I also have it on a couple of flyers as well to try and keep it as simple as we can, because you can tell transportation is getting pretty complicated. It shouldn't be this way. You know, pay as you go, free roads, that's what we want to get back to. So we want them to stop building roads with debt End all the diversions completely. Do I hear an amen for that one? No unelected board should have this kind of taxing authority. The Transportation Commission are appointees of the governor. They don't answer to we the people, and that's why they've been able to get away with this. And same with the toll authorities, same with your regional mobility authorities here locally. They are not elected, and yet they have essentially taxing authority. And we want to increase the efficiency and stop the wasteful spending inside TxDOT. One thing that Joanne and I were just looking at the other day, they just hired an international affairs director, expanded Phil Wilson's executive team. His executive team just got expanded by 5, and combined, they make more than $1 million a year in salaries. When they brought on Phil Wilson, he was the first non-engineer to head the highway department. He's a former lobbyist for an energy company and has been appointed to 4 or 5 other state posts by Rick Perry, so he's pretty much a good friend of the governor. Good guy. He's really a nice guy, but he's hampered by the policies of this Transportation Commission. And when he came on, they doubled his salary from what the previous executive director made. So we got to stop this kind of stuff. We also need to stop using taxpayer money to subsidize toll projects. If they aren't financially solvent, and they already know from the toll viability studies that there's not going to be enough users of the road to pay for the debt, to retire the debt and construct that road, they should not be building toll roads. Right? And we want to end all this non-traditional financing, these P3s, they call them innovative financing. And I keep saying this back to the governor's people, I'm like, what's so innovative about debt? What does the Bible say about debt? Debt is a curse. There is no good debt and bad debt. I was just talking with the governor's guy the other day. He's like, oh, well, the governor thinks there's some good debt and there's some bad debt. No. All debt is a curse, okay? All debt. We might be able to get away with it, have some debt be less painful than others, but at the end of the day, it's not a good thing, especially when it's taxpayers who are they're entering into this debt against our will without asking our permission. They're just doing it. So, one thing that the governor is promoting and endorsing, this just about blew the roof off for Joanne and I and many others. He's promoting a bill for century bonds to create a whole new class of debt that, just like the name sounds, will take 100 years to pay it back, to build these road projects he's wanting to build. What's happened is they've maxed out the state's credit card. They've already borrowed against all our future gas tax money. They now have $5 billion in bonds that has to be backed by the general obligation bonds, by all Texans, and basically our general revenue fund is backing those $5 billion. They have Texas Mobility Fund, which is also in a heap of debt. And they've run out of debt capacity to borrow to do all these toll roads, so they're trying to create a whole new kind of bond so that they can keep building the toll roads. Well, of course, that outlasts the useful life of the road. I mean, the road will only last roughly about 40 years, and yet you're going to be paying for it for 100. It's just insane. The other thing we'd love to do is opt out of the federal highway program and get 100% of Texas money back in our state. That bill's working its way through the House right now. Pro-taxpayer solutions, where do we get the revenue if more is needed? Well, first they need to end the gas tax diversions. All the money they're raiding from our highway fund, because 47% of it doesn't even go to roads. So they got to do that first. Now, our analysis of the budget showed it was $1 billion a year. The governor claims it's only $650 million a year, and the Senate budget writer thinks it's only $300 million a year. So you can just decide for yourself whose number you think is probably more accurate. The school diversions equal $750 million a year, because 25% of our gas tax is constitutionally dedicated to schools. Did y'all know that? Quarter of every dollar we collect in road money has to go to public schools. So when you count that diversion and the fact that inflation has eaten into our gas tax, we're only getting about 8 cents when it's supposed to be closer to 20. Okay, then we have vehicle sales tax. This we found out about thanks to Senator Nichols. We agree with him on this bill. We're very supportive of his bill on getting the vehicle sales tax money that we already pay. It's an existing tax dedicated to roads. Right now it's being sent to general revenue, where they're basically funding Medicaid and schools with it. And we're like, anything that is a tax on road users, whether anything on your car, your auto parts, vehicle registration, all those things should be going to pay for roads, right? That's taxation tied to the users. That's the best kind we can have. Well, this pot of money is over $3 billion a year that's not getting to roads either. And that'd be like raising the gas tax 30 cents a gallon. But we don't have to raise taxes if they just take this money and put it where it needs to go. And of course they whine. They whine about how, oh, how can you do that? That's going to blow a $3 billion hole in our budget, Terry. Where are we going to get that $3 billion from if we put that money over to roads? This isn't new money. It's existing money, and we can't, cut spending and be fiscally responsible. So, based on careful study, this was back in 2009 before the vehicle sales tax was discovered where it was going. He said, the gas tax is by far the most fiscally conservative way to build our roads. Definitely having a tax-based, user fee, free road system, like the gas tax funded roads have been up until now since Eisenhower started building our roads, interstates. That is the most fiscally conservative and most affordable way to fund our roads. So now here's your chance to be heard. We would love for you to call your lawmakers and tell them no more debt, no more tolls, especially when it comes to handing our roads to private corporations. End all diversions and dedicate our existing taxes on road users to roads. That means vehicle sales tax, gas tax. Those two things, ending diversions and dedicating our vehicle sales tax we already pay, allocating that to roads, will solve TxDOT's funding shortfall without any more tolls. That's what they need to do, and that's what they're refusing to do in Austin. And you can call Senator Nichols and tell him the same, and that we don't want our freeways tolled and free lanes downgraded to frontage roads, because he's our roadblock on that bill. And here's the switchboard number. And they're open from 8 to 5 every day at 463-4630, area code 512. Obviously, you guys are really good at working with like-minded coalitions around the state. That's Joanne's forte. And please sign up for our email alerts. You can do that right on our website, and we also have a sign-up sheet going around. So we would love to have you get our email blast so you know what bills are being heard each week and how you can in one click, contact the committee members and tell them what we're for and against. And build the transportation team. Of course, Joanne is like your one-woman transportation team, but I know she needs help. So that's one way you can help, and also continue to contact those lawmakers and send that message to them. So that's the conclusion of my presentation, but you may have questions. I know I've kept you a while, so maybe we don't want to skip them. I don't know what you want to do, Joanne, but
Well, I've got some questions for you, Terry.
Okay, all right.
And as many of you stay as possible, and I want to reiterate that back there on the back table, Terry's got some information that covers this so that you'll have it right in front of you to study before you make your calls. And last week, I had some reports that Nichols' office said that our bill numbers on our alerts were wrong. They were wrong. Terri Hall and I don't put out bill numbers that are inaccurate, because I can tell you by the time we have worked on this, we know what the bill numbers are. But anytime we send out an alert, most of the time if you click on the bill number, it will actually take you to the web page that tells you about the bill. So don't let these staffers get you all flustered and confused, okay? It's not that Terry and I are saying we're perfect and we don't make any mistakes, but by the time we send out an alert, we at least have the bill numbers right, I assure you. So there's information back there, and that letter actually is a letter that I wrote representing the Tea Party Caucus Advisory Committee, and so that in a nutshell tells you exactly what the solution is to transportation. But it comes down to this, as Terry said. They fund what they want to fund. And by the time we get done making an analysis of the budget, you will see that there were many opportunities for them to fund highways. But there's a lot of money involved in this. And don't forget the opportunity for campaign contributions from the bond companies and people who make money off of this scheme.
In fact, transportation committees considered a plum appointment because it's pretty nonpartisan, generally speaking, and they get gobs of campaign contributions from all of these road builders, engineers, the toll gantry people, the bond people. It's a gravy train.
Okay, Terry, are the toll roads awarded on a bid basis?
Traditional toll roads, like they've done up until now, up until Rick Perry, it's kind of safe to say, they did do competitively bid. But they've now changed the statute in 2003 in a huge omnibus transportation bill called HB 3588. HB just stands for House Bill, SB stands for Senate Bill. It was a House Bill 3588 that passed, and they replaced competitive bids on these projects with something called best value bidding. So now they can pretty much steer the contract to anybody they want to and just say, oh, well, that was the best value for the state, even if it cost us more. And that's how I think, magically, Centra has gotten 3 of the 4 P3 contracts.
And that kind of is the second part of this question was, why or how does a foreign corporation like Centra get the contract?
They do this best value bidding. Well, really what's crazy about it is they put it out for a bid, but it's not really like a traditional design bid build procurement that we've had up until the last 10 years. And basically what happens is they don't even have the road designed. They just know from what point to what point they want to either add lanes or put a road in. Normally in the traditional road procurement process, design bid build, TxDOT would do the majority of the design with their engineers and put that out for bid for the full engineering to be completed by a private sector firm. Then once they got the final design from that firm, they would put it out for bid for the construction so that everybody knew how much rebar, how much cement, how much everything had to be used on this, and everybody had an apples to apples bid process. And so and the state always had to issue it to the lowest bid. Well, now they don't even have the road designed when Centra puts the bid in. They don't design it till after they're awarded the contract. So I keep going, how do you know if you're getting a good deal if you don't even have a design you're bidding on? So this is so rife with abuse, it is just unbelievable. And one thing that Joanne and I have been trying to get the Lieutenant Governor's office to help us with is to get some cost comparisons of what our road per mile cost was before all these gimmicks and after. Because I bet you we're going to find our road cost, even with the lower prices we're seeing because of the economy, I bet you it's exploded. Because there's just no way this is an efficient way to do things.
Well, Terry, in an update, I'm not getting anywhere with Dewhurst office, so I'm going to try Corona.
Okay.
Because I think probably that Central Corona will help us with that, so I'm going to try there.
Very good.
Who does TxDOT report to, and have they ever been audited?
Well, I don't know if you guys, are you aware of the Sunset Advisory Commission and the Sunset process, where state agencies go under sunset? Well, TxDOT had gone through sunset in 2009, but the bill never passed, so they got kicked to 2011, which was last session. So I've gone through 2 rounds, basically, of sunset with TxDOT, and one of the #1 things that the grassroots have been begging for from our lawmakers is a financial audit of TxDOT, top to bottom audit. What they have had in 2010 was a management audit, having to do with kind of the bureaucratic, structural kind of inefficiencies. And you wouldn't believe what that audit said. I actually read all 628 pages of it. It was not a pretty picture. But if that's how bad their management was, I can't imagine what a financial audit would uncover. What I hear from lawmakers is they literally don't have the resources inside the state auditor's office to actually audit an agency as big as TxDOT. They would have to outsource it to a private firm, and that's in the millions of dollars to pay for. So, like Joanne said, they can come up with $7 million for this IBM software that did nothing for the schools, but they can't come up with a couple million to get financial accountability inside a very wasteful agency. So the answer is no, they have not had a financial audit. And TxDOT has an executive director that does the day-to-day operations and an executive team that handles running the agency. But the Transportation Commission, which meets once a month, there's 5 of them. They're appointed by the governor, and that's who ultimately is in charge of TxDOT and the executive director and their executive team. And so who appoints them? The governor. And the governor keeps reappointing very, very, very bad people who are into all these public-private partnerships. In fact, I've heard from employees inside TxDOT who don't like the direction that the agency has gone in the last 10 years. Really great people. You probably know, you're TxDOT district people, some of you probably know some of them. They're wonderful people. We have bad leadership right now in the agency. And one of the things they were telling us is Goldman Sachs and all these bond guys, they're crawling TxDOT's offices. Crawling all over them. In fact, when we were there that day, Joanne, the last time we met with Phil, did you notice? There wasn't one English-speaking team of people in there. They're selling our roads to these international companies, and they're in there probably every day of the week, meeting with our reps on this.
Where are the central projects in the DFW Metroplex?
There's the LBJ, and I'm not exactly sure the project limits from memory, but it's the part that you see under construction right now, basically, on the I-635. And they're actually going to put, I believe the toll lanes are going to be underneath where the existing road is, and that they're going to rebuild the free lanes on top and actually add some free lanes, supposedly. We'll see if that's how it turns out. But that's that project. They have another one called the North Tarrant Express. Now, the one that they're working on building right now or expanding is Interstate 820. They're referring to that as the North Tarrant Express because it actually involves 5 other segments. It involves parts of 121, I believe 75 maybe, parts of 35. So there's a whole bunch of things. They're trying to build a system. They're going to link together a bunch of nearby roads and just call the whole thing the North Tarrant Express, even though the main project is Interstate 820. So those are the 2 right now that Centra has.
Is the 635 Dallas construction going to be a toll road?
Yeah, that's the one.
North Dallas Tollway has crowds of cars all the time. How can they say it has not paid for itself?
Well, you'd have to look at their financial statements to know for sure, but they have debt that they issued for that project, and when the debt's paid, that's when you could technically scream at them to take the toll off the road. But through this legislation you saw passed last session, they can just continue to borrow against that money or go into more debt or refinance the debt and keep pushing the payoff date out further and further and further by refinancing their debt, which is why these bond guys are crawling all over the Capitol. Because the bond guys get their money on the front end, the people who are doing the deals, and then of course the bank guys get them on the back end. So it's a pretty corrupt process, and I just wish I had better news for everybody.
Where do I get a copy of What Do We Want that was on the screen?
In the back. There's flyers back there that do say that. It's called Ending Transportation Gridlock.
If the purpose of Toll 130 was to handle Laredo truck traffic, why don't we just charge tolls to those trucks?
There actually is, down in the valley right now, the SH 130 stops at I-10 in Seguin area. So this was part of the original Trans-Texas Corridor 35 project, this SH 130 was. So it doesn't go all the way to Laredo, but you can connect to Laredo using 281 or 35 and come in through Bexar County and then get on Centra's toll road. There's actually RMAs, or these regional mobility authorities, all over in the valley. They have them in Cameron County, Hidalgo County, and they want to put tolls on all the international bridges. They want to put tolls on a bunch of their roads and loops around their cities to try and capture tolls from the truck traffic. But here's a problem we have. Most of them are going to be Mexican trucks, not U.S. trucks. In the toll viability studies for Hidalgo County's international bridge crossings and some of the roads they want to do there, their toll viability studies show they expect an 80% failure to pay rate from Mexican cars and a 60% failure to pay rate from Mexican trucks. So, I don't think we're going to get the money from these people that we think we're going to get because they know that they're not going to pay. Everything's electronic. They don't want to do toll booths anymore because that's labor costs that these private companies don't want to cover. So they do it all electronic, and that whole mess is a whole different ball of wax. We won't go into that today, but if you want to know about the problems with electronic toll collection, let me tell you, people get erroneous bills, they get false bills, they can take away your car registration, they can even throw you in jail for failure to pay a debt, which is against our civil rights, but anyway, it's a mess.
It seems like we are losing most of these battles. Have we had any successes in reversing or stopping these corrupt policies?
It is like putting a rock uphill, just like Joanne said, with so many things, whether it's the budget, schools, Medicaid, immigration. It's the same way with transportation. But I can tell you, we have stopped a litany of horrible bills in the last 8 years. We haven't been able to get our good stuff through other than the repeal of the Trans-Texas Corridor. So, and that happened because there was a Texas-sized revolt, mostly from East Texas. See, the 35 hearings had about half the number of people that protested to the Trans-Texas Corridor 69, which was coming through here, up to Texarkana. And when 28,000 Texans went on the record against that road project, that got their attention. So really it's a numbers game. And that's why I come and talk to your groups. That's why Joanne goes and talks to all these groups, because we have to wake up the grassroots. And it's really, it's up to us to put a stop to it. And we can't give up. There's too much at stake, as you can tell. Our kids aren't going to have freedom to travel. They're going to inherit so much debt, there isn't going to be a way for them to get around. They're going to be stuck on substandard frontage roads instead of a highway system. And mobility is going to come to a screeching halt because you're not going to have the way, the ability to pay 75 cents a mile. I know our team, our 17-year-old is our oldest girl. She would love to have a license right now. One, we can't afford the car insurance on a teen. But two, I don't know how these teenagers can afford a car unless mom and dad can pay for all of it for them. I mean, they don't make enough money at these jobs to be able to do that. So I don't see how our young people, college students, and even young professionals, because of all the student debt they incur, we're making driving plain unaffordable. And this is about our freedom to travel and defending it. And so anything worth defending, it's going to be freedom and liberty. And even if we seem like we're losing a lot of battles, it's worth doing because we can't lose. At the end of the day, we don't want to keep losing more ground. If anything, we're going to try and gain ground.
Do you know anything about the last sections of Tyler's Toll 49 having under-spec'd bridges?
Say that again,
specifications, in other words.
Not the right specifications.
They're narrower, and I was told they were under-spec.
That could be very true. I don't know the specifics of the engineering like that on that road, but I do know that the rest of the loop they haven't completed yet. They want to turn Loop 49 into one of these P3s, and they're likely to take over some of the existing 49 in the deal. So it's a bad thing. You've got to watch that really, really closely. I would encourage you actually to attend your local RMA meetings. They always meet during the day, so working people have a hard time policing this stuff. But you wouldn't believe what's in their financial statements and their toll viability studies and what you can find out from that. And they're likely to come after property tax and sales tax to subsidize that thing. So be watching for that. You don't want them doing that to you.
Well, on April the 9th, and we'll send out an alert, there's going to be a meeting downtown. I think it may be in the Commissioner's courtroom. I don't know yet, but it's a meeting at 6:30. I've been asked to speak on issues that are important to grassroots. And I can just tell you right now, part of it's going to be this stuff, and it's going to be that multimodal facility that they keep telling me that they're not going to build, but TxDOT's got records of the project. So.
It's probably in the long-range plan.
Yes, yes. So anyway, why don't we oppose Highway Loop 49 and ask the public not to use it?
You can boycott it, sure. The problem with boycotting, see, like even Centra's Toll Road, there's still a way that it stings the taxpayer. Because that federal loan partially funded a good portion, almost half, of Centra's project, if they go under, the taxpayers are out that money. So we can boycott and try to not have them get enough traffic to take these roads, but at the end of the day, I fear, this is what I fear by doing that, is if enough of them start to fail and go under, we're going to have some draconian bailout, tax hike, something to bail these things out, because they're just not going to let that many roads fail. Now, ultimately, if it was a truly private road, and all of it was funded by private money, not any tax money, if it failed, the state would get it back for free. Because we just take over the project because the private operator didn't pay its bills. But that's not how they structure the deals. They structure it with taxpayers as a hedge to make sure that that won't happen. So that's the hard part about boycotting the roads. It's kind of a double-edged sword. But we definitely can send a message. If they're not getting enough traffic, they're going to have to do something. And that's where I'm showing up to some of these local meetings and talking with your county commissioners and such, who controls your RMA board, to let them know this is unacceptable. We want that road to be a free road. What do we need to do to pay off that debt and make it a free road?
Well, I actually have a copy of the toll viability study done on Loop 49 before they exempted it from public access, and I can tell you that road, they've always known it would not be toll viable. That road will never have enough tolls on it to pay for itself.
And they should have never built it. I mean, this is what just kills you. They should have never built it if it wasn't financially sustainable.
May I use any of your written information in letters to the editor?
Oh, of course. We encourage that. Sorry. Always feel free. There is no plagiarism with me, okay? So I don't care if you take an article I've written, put your name on it, and you put it into the paper. We just want to get the word out, okay? And the Texas Turf, we have just thousands of articles archived. You can do all kinds of word searches and find out just about anything on there if it relates to transportation, P3s, and Texas road policy. So please do that. We encourage you to do that. We've got to talk it up and get the community awake on this issue.
Okay, we got just a couple more. TxDOT requires local governments to comply with the National Traffic Code to set the warrants before you set speed limits. Does TxDOT follow the National Traffic Code?
They'll tell you they did. But let's just talk about how they set the speed limit to 85 miles per hour. You're supposed to conduct a traffic study, which is what this person asked. And that's true. And they have certain standards they're supposed to comply with of how you set a speed limit, what's safe and what's not. They had a single TxDOT engineer, not an independent party. They had a TxDOT engineer go out and drive on SH 130 going 85 miles per hour with no traffic, no one coming on or off. This was before the road was even open to traffic. And said that whatever speed he was driving at, what was comfortable, is how they set that speed limit. Well, of course, we knew that they needed to hit 85 as the number because that's what was going to get him $100 million. So conveniently, that's what he hit. So that was their version of a traffic study.
You know, it's one of those things, Terry, that people are probably shocked still. I mean, I could hear the gasp as you were speaking. You couldn't make this stuff up.
You can't.
Really.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Have you done an analysis of contributions by Centra, road construction companies, subcontractors, bond lawyers, et cetera, to certain people's campaigns?
Well, I can tell you that Senator Nichols has got more money from the road lobby than even statewide office holders receive. So that can kind of open your eyes a bit. But again, the reason why they think Transportation Committee is a plum appointment is because they get a heap of money from all those people that they just cited. A lot. Now, it is very hard. The Texas Ethics Commission reports are ridiculous. Lobbyists can call themselves consultants. They don't put the company name necessarily. And so you have to kind of know the players of some of the executives at Zachary or at Centra or something like that for you to even track the money because they don't necessarily tell you it's Centra. So it's hard to track. But the studies I've done in the past show that every one of those Transportation Committee members is pretty well bought and paid for with special interest money.
Well, you can see in the testimony, the public testimony against the bills, you will have, I think just this week, we had like 10 people oppose bills and like 2 or 3 people from the lobby
paid to be there.
Support the bills, and they're paid to be
That's
there.
Right.
And guess who they sided with?
The special
The
interest.
lobbyists, yeah.
That's right. That's how they can be tone deaf real easily with the money that gets greased.
Okay, we got about 3 more. What is the status of Central Type's bill to pay off TxDOT's highway debt? That's actually in a hearing on Monday.
It's up for hearing on Monday.
A hearing on Monday. Now, Bob, I don't know that Terry would even know this, but we do need to look into it. At the TxDOT office, why do I have to go through 2 high-security doors to get to a Mexican bank teller window to speak with someone
At the TxDOT office at 155 and toll 49.
So it's like their text tag office?
High security. Well, it's their construction thing. There's 2 security doors, and then there's bulletproof glass at the secretary.
What do you mean?
That's crazy.
Are you saying that it's a Hispanic teller?
No. It's really high security.
No, what are you saying here about Mexican bank teller window? What does that mean, Bob?
Well, that's the only place I've seen bulletproof glass.
Oh,
an inch
you're
and a
saying
half.
that it looks like it's an entrance.
Like
With
border
a-
security or
with a
something.
sticker.
Okay.
Okay, since I'm not familiar with what going into a Mexican bank feels like, I didn't know. Okay, Terry, and here's the last question. When is your movie coming out?
Oh, goodness. We actually do have a gentleman who's a filmmaker who's done things for the History Channel, Discovery Channel, and Hollywood Features, who lives in San Antonio and grew up there, who came to one of our early debates with TxDOT back in 2006, I guess it was, and took this cause under his wing, and there's actually already been 4 documentaries made on aspects of our fight. And it's called Truth Be Told, and that was up on the slide at the end. It was Truth, B-E, and then T-O-L-L-E-D, kind of a play on words, truthbetold.com. You can watch some of the trailers. You can actually watch the movie. He's put it up in different segments up online. And he's actually working on a 5th film right now on the 281 project in San Antonio and all the corruption that's gone behind that. So there actually are some movies made. I wouldn't say they're necessarily about me, but you know what I'm saying. They're documenting the cause. So thank you for being so patient and
Y'all show your appreciation.